The Colorado Buffaloes are fresh off their first win of the season. They stomped the Delaware Blue Hens back to the barn, and now they are on the road for the first time this season, heading to Houston to take on the Cougars. But look out, Texas. There's a new sheriff in town. Ryan Staub has taken over for the Buffaloes. He's gunslinging, and he is ready to lead this team. I'm Liam Howard, joined by Leo Rivera, Oliver Hayes, Xavier Mitchnevitz. We are ready for our first conference game of the season. How fired up are we? And are we going to go into Houston and take ourselves a dub?
I think I am fired up personally. Me and Leo, we're making the trip, and it is going to be a hot, humid game out there. But I am personally very excited to see this Colorado team fresh off its first win and go right into conference play against a Houston team that looks solid in my opinion, but I know you guys are not as high on them and could look at this as maybe a cupcake game. But we'll get into this later. X, what do you think?
I don't know. First Big 12 game of the season. I'm pretty hyped about it. I got to say Houston does look pretty solid, but I don't know. Well, I guess we'll discuss it later on in the show. That's what we're here for, aren't we?
Hey, if you want to talk about going deep into playoff football, you're going to have to win these early conference games, and there is no better test than the Houston Cougars on the road for the Colorado Buffaloes to open up their conference slate.
Yeah, you love to get a win against a team like Delaware, but it's always getting real once you get into conference play, and we are at that point in the season. But looking at Delaware, let's talk about our game against the Blue Hens that we just picked up the W in this past week. Obviously, big win. You win 31-7. Who or what impressed you in this game?
Well, I could talk about the obvious people. Quarterback Ryan Staub obviously had the breakout game like you mentioned. We could talk about punter Damon Greaves. I know that you asked a few questions. You're going to love to talk about him. But for me, the running back room, they've stood out to me this year. That's been a point of emphasis for Colorado the past 2 years with how poor they've been. But this year, they were solid in week one. People thought they could have gone to them more. And we saw another big game from DeKalon Taylor, especially in the passing game. Had another touchdown, 4 catches for almost 50 yards. And Simeon Price, even though Michael Welch didn't play as well as he did in week one, Simeon Price stepped up, had the solid running game on the ground, and showed us some pretty fun, entertaining hurdles. 360 hurdle. Not sure if that was necessary, but either way, it was inspiring. We heard, a little bit about what playing for Colorado meant to him with him being in the transfer portal earlier today, talking about how he wasn't sure if he was ever going to play college football ever again. But now he's using this year to try and get to the next level in the NFL, and I think that week 3 in Houston, the first Big 12 matchup of the year for him, could be a great opportunity for him to continue this game his productive game on the ground.
Oliver, you just talked about the obvious, so I will. I'll say Ryan Staub. If you would have told me 3 years ago that Ryan Staub would have been trying out there for the Colorado Buffaloes, you slap me silly. That's crazy to me. I just can't believe it. And he balled out. He had a good performance. 150 yards passing. He was accurate. He was hitting receivers in stride. Most notably, Sincere Brown had 120 yards with 2 deep bombs in the game. I mean, Ryan Staub, he impressed and moved the offense pretty solid. When they haven't really been moving the ball lately with Salter at quarterback, it was impressive to me.
Everybody wants to talk about these quarterbacks, but what about the people giving them the ball? I want to highlight Zarian McGill and Yaya Atia, who came in, late in that second half. These guys have had to deal with that whole, rotation of 3 different guys, and it's really hard. You talk about cadences, you talk about, the feel under center, even though, Colorado's in shotgun a lot, the height differential, all that has to come into play, the way you're making calls at the line, and, you really didn't hear these guys' name called, and that's a good thing at the center position. I think those guys, both played solid.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Staub, of course, the one you're going to look at. An incredible game coming off the bench, and, I mean, he seriously looks poised in this offense. You talk about Sincere Brown as well, and the 2 deep shots that he had, both audibles from Ryan Staub. He's coming out there with confidence. And then you mentioned Damon Greaves. I got to talk about him a little bit. My goodness. 2 punts within the 5-yard line. He's pinned the opposing team at the 1-yard line twice in 2 weeks. I mean, we got to talk about this Aussie weapon we got on special teams. He's not getting enough love, but my goodness, what a game from him. In terms of, there were still some things you can improve. It's the early season. You got things you can work on, and even in a blowout win, you can still look to improve and change some things. What are some of those things you might look to improve going forward?
Well, personally, I'm looking at the defensive side of the ball. I thought that they stepped up as far as containing the rushing game. After allowing almost 200 yards to Georgia Tech in week 1, they stepped up, only allowed 67 yards, I believe it was, on the ground to Delaware, so that was pretty solid. But In the secondary, Preston Hodge and DJ McKinney, they are the leaders, and as Coach Prime said, they did not have a great first half. They fixed it a little bit in the second half, but they need to step up, especially against some solid receivers, and Connor Wegman, who's going to be throwing the ball. And the big thing for me personally is the tackling. After the catch, Delaware had 222 yards. Granted, 67 of those came on that fumble that Ben Finiseth forced that would have came back to a holding penalty. However, there were a lot of missed tackles, especially on that play. There were a lot of long plays for Delaware, a lot of chunk plays that came off of little curls, out routes, things like that. And it was just because Colorado could not wrap up. They could not make tackles. And I think that they need to just get a lot more physical, play aggressive, especially on the outside, and follow the ball and make sure that they can make plays.
I agree with everything you said. But I do say they need to stop the run better, especially, I mean, you're giving up 4 yards of carry to Delaware, right? It was a 7-10 game at one point before Ryan Staub came in and saved the day from his third string spot. But, I mean, I think the Buffs still need to stop the run. I mean, but a lot of that has to do with their physicality and wrapping up and tackling and the holding call that got called back, or that would have gotten called back if Ben Finiseth didn't come and save the day with the strip. So they still need to stop the run, and Houston does have a strong run game, at least through the first two games of the season. So I mean, they need to stop the run.
When you talk about, stopping the run, where does that begin? It's in the linebacking core. And one thing specifically I think this defense needs to improve on is the communication as a whole. We heard it from the guys after that first game at Folsom that they weren't really, able to get the call out, sideline to sideline. Whether it's the new guys rotating in at cornerback or, in the secondary at safety, there have been so many new faces that just need to get more comfortable with being on the same page and being more vocal as a defense, right? As a defense, if you are not talking, you are not going to be successful. That's one thing my old defensive coordinator used to say, and I think that, holds true to this Colorado team.
Yeah, comfortability is always something up in the air early in a season, and I've seen it oddly enough with the people leading this team. That's the coaching staff. It's been struggles in comfortability, and almost I said this a little bit last week, but it seems like they don't know their own team in some ways. The play calling, it doesn't tend to play to the skill sets of the players they have out on the field, and there's been a lot of rotation. So there's a lot of change in that, and you do have to adjust pretty frequently. But it's like when they have those guys out there, they aren't necessarily using them in the best possible way that they could. Like I also want to talk about the running backs. We've got a lot of great production out of them, but I still feel like we could be getting more because they're not riding the hot hand really. You'll get a guy out there and he's getting big runs and he's performing well, and then he comes out after 2 plays, and you're like, what the heck? Like Michael Welch, I mean, we saw that in the first game especially. My goodness, 8 yards per carry in the first half, and then he's just off the field, nowhere to be seen. That can't happen. We saw it improve a little bit this week, but they used Michael Welch for the first drive and then radio silence. Like, he wasn't as productive, so it makes a little more sense. But it seems like that was kind of the plan for them almost, which just doesn't really line up. But, just quickly, does this win, even though it's against a team like Delaware, not a huge win by any means, can it catapult you into conference play and sort of reignite that confidence?
I think it does catapult the Buffs into conference play and spark some momentum for them, because I think when a lot of Colorado fans, I mean, like you said, you could slap you silly if you believe that Ryan Staub would have came out and had the performance that he did, and that was just so inspiring, especially with him being a 3-year guy for the Buffs. I think that is something that the Buffs can just ride with him, Coach Prime talking about how he's a phenomenal human who knows the offense, who can adjust on the fly, make plays. Coach Prime said that he needs 3 plays on the fly out of his quarterback for him to be successful. So I think that was something that they found that's fantastic. But on the flip side of that, how does Kane Salter respond as a senior who transferred in trying to make some noise? I mean, Juju Lewis, I'm not as worried about him just because he's a freshman. But then, of course, with the defense, Houston has some decent weapons. They have their tight end, Tanner Koziel. Connor Wegman I talked about. He's pretty solid. I think he could be potentially the best quarterback that the Buffs have faced this season so far. And so I think that while the Buffs have momentum on offense, the defense needs to step up and figure things out.
Yeah, I would say yes and no, as if Delaware acts as a launch pad, because, I mean, Ryan Staub's the starting quarterback for right now, but you still have uncertainty at quarterback. We could see Caden Salter go in against Houston. We could see Juju go in against Houston again. They need to stop the run. That's another facet. I mean, you have to stop the run, and Houston's going to run the ball on them. But the offensive line does look really good under Seaton, under the anchor of Seaton, and I think the run game is ready to take that next jump. So I think that this win is like, yes, it acts as a launch pad in some areas, but no, they need to improve in other areas.
I think most definitely. Winning is contagious first and foremost. Those guys, especially the transfers who are coming in, they need to see the little victories. They need to see that they can do the things right on game day, whether it's catching a ball, even if it's just, a curl or 5 yards. Just seeing, visually that ball coming in, you catching it and securing it, getting those mental reps in game is something that's, so valuable this time of year early on in the season. And I think when you look at the fact that a lot of these Colorado players were able to get involved, you've seen so many different people getting rotated. It builds confidence within this unit that you have the depth and you have the comfortability to go out there and compete with a team like Houston.
Yeah, I think, like you said, winning is contagious, and regardless of if it's a team like Delaware, regardless of if it's a huge win over a Big 12 opponent, that ignites a fire under a team. That gets them going, and that can definitely carry into the next week. And I feel like now that the quarterback situation is seeming to be trending up rather than trending in a negative direction, that's really encouraging. That's going to make this team want to play for one another. And also, you mentioned a lot of new faces coming in. When you're a new face in a program, you got to see what winning looks like.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't experienced that yet, and you stack a few losses, you're just like, okay, I don't even know if this program can win. I don't know if I can win here. I'm gonna hop in the portal. I'm out of here. So like that, and that's become such an issue lately that it feels very encouraging to see all these new faces in here and getting a win, especially in blowout fashion. Now heading on the road. And speaking of which, we are going to play Houston this week. Who or what needs to step up and lead the way to make a statement victory here and start off conference play 1-0?
I think the defensive line needs to step up, and maybe not step up because I think they, like I said earlier, they had a better week against Delaware. However, it is Delaware, not Houston, a Big 12 opponent. And with Connor Wegman, like I said, he was able to air the ball out last week. He was able to air the ball out the first week as well, and that's something that the Buffs haven't really seen as much against Nick Minicucci. They didn't see Haynes King throw the ball too much. They saw him run the ball, and Connor Wegman can do that as well. He had 10 rushes, even though he wasn't as productive last week. He can do both things, and I think if the defensive line can pressure him, get to the quarterback a little bit more, even though we've seen them get to the quarterback a few times already this season, if they can do that and also contain Dean Connors, who had 2 touchdowns and has been pretty productive this season, then that can help spark the Buffs' defense and make it a little bit easier for the secondary to get things going. And of course, that just sets up the offense, and we'll have to see what happens there.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the obvious pick with Ryan Staub. I mean, the offense moved best when Ryan Staub was on the field, and I think that if he is able to move the ball against Houston, who had a really good defense last year and has looking like they're going to have a good defense this year, I think that it will lead the way into a statement conference win, like they did against Baylor last year. So
when you look at that offense, I think specifically you got to be more consistent in sustaining drives. Too many times this team gets the ball back from their defense or, after a big stop, and they go 3 plays, 3 and out, and that defense is running right back on the field. And when you talk about, D-line who are big and heavy, playing at altitude, still getting used to that game speed, it makes a big difference when you're having to run on and off the field so much. So being able to go out and, get into the red zone more often and be more complete in these longer play drives and, capping those off with touchdowns and not field goals, not having to rely on the leg of Alejandro Mata, even though he's been Mata-matic this season. But I think those are going to be key components for that moving forward.
For me, it's going to be the secondary. I think that, Connor Wigman transferred to Houston, and he had some struggles at Texas A&M. A lot of Texas A&M fans aren't huge fans of Connor Wigman, and that is because he would make some very in pressure, he would make some not so wise throws, and it cost him a lot. He hasn't really been forced that way yet. They haven't played much of anyone this season, but that is something that you want to force him to do. If you force him to throw the ball into pressure, you force him to throw it into double covered receivers, and you're giving him complex looks that he, forcing him to layer the ball. I think that's when we're going to start to see him struggle and sort of revert to that early young Connor Wigman that we saw at Texas A&M. In that offense, though, they have a lot of firepower, and they've showed it so far. As I mentioned, nobody too crazy that they've played. But what do you need to be careful of and really scout this week to make sure it doesn't hurt you on game day?
I mean, I've talked a lot about Connor Wegman and Houston's offense and what they can do, and whether it's the running game or throwing the ball. But I think the big thing is that Colorado has not seen QBs throw the ball at least long or accurately. Haynes King kept the ball on the ground with Georgia Tech. Nick Minicucci, even though he tried to air the ball out a little bit more, he was not accurate by any means. A lot of times the ball was being thrown out of bounds, especially on go routes and routes down the sideline. And I think that Connor Wegman, even though he is trying to deal with pressure and trying to make better decisions this year, I think that just the fact that he has the ability to throw the ball and had a bunch of big plays against Rice last week is a big thing that the Buffs will need to worry about. He had a 74-yard touchdown, and he had, I think it was like 8 plays that were 15-plus yards or more in the air. So that would be the big thing that I think the Buffs will need to worry about that they haven't really seen this season, especially with the secondary having struggled against some not-so-great quarterbacks who at least throwing the ball.
So I think there's 2 things that the Buffs really need to worry about in terms of Connor Wegman and this Houston offense. I think one is Tanner Kozoil and the tight end. He leads the team in receptions, leads the team in yards. I mean, you have to take him out of the game if you want any success against that Houston offense. Number 2 is attacking the run game. I mean, Houston diced up Rice playing with these counter plays that we saw Colorado run against Georgia Tech. I think that they need to stop those counter plays in order to get some stops on defense, which hopefully will lead to touchdowns on offense.
Yeah, you talk about starting those counter plays, and that, begins first with being able to identify the motion. So many times Georgia Tech specifically was able to pull a tackle, a guard, and just get the eyes of the linebackers wandering long enough for those gaps to open up and those running lanes to really expand. You have to be disciplined with your assignment and knowing where that football is supposed to be at all times and not guessing as that, front seven. And I think if Colorado is able to do that, they could watch, the big guys up front, where they're moving. They're going to be able to get to the ball a lot faster. And when they do that, they have to play physical. You cannot come into this Houston team on the road thinking you're just going to shoulder thud and call it a day. You have to wrap up and you have to run your feet through contact.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think that looking back towards the offense, you mentioned Koziol at tight end, and he has been their number 1 receiving threat so far. But a large reason for that has been that these other teams have been focused on taking away their receivers, and then he's been able to go. I think you got to keep a lid on this defense. Or on this offense, I should say. You got to keep a lid on this offense. You got to make sure that you're not focusing too much on Koziol. Like, he is definitely their biggest threat, but you can't key in too much on him and then let the receivers go downfield, because that's when Connor Wegman is going to chuck the ball way down there, and you're going to be giving up 6 big plays in the first half, and that's a recipe for disaster. And it's something they got to definitely be careful about and not overcommit to just one guy and what he brings to the offense. But looking at Houston as a team, where would you say that they rank among the the very I'd say competitive and strong Big 12 conference that the Colorado Buffaloes are going to have to go up against this year?
Well, it was interesting because last year we obviously saw a team that in Arizona State that was ranked super low in the preseason poll, to the point where the Big 12 was just like, all right, we're going to get rid of that this year with them going to the college football playoff last year. And obviously, I don't think that Houston has that firepower, that ability to make a push like that. That was obviously a Cinderella story, a kind of a once every decade type of run maybe. But I do think that they are somewhat of a sleeper. I think Connor Wegman can have a big year. I've obviously talked highly of him so far. Dean Connors has shown production. The receiving group has shown that they're solid, and the defense has only allowed 9 points through 2 weeks, even though Houston hasn't faced 2 great opponents in Rice and Stephen F. Austin. So I think that they won't. I don't think that they'll have a big year, but after going 3-6 in conference play last season, not really being too big of a threat, I think they could bounce back and potentially upset some teams, even Colorado.
Yeah, it's tough because Colorado plays some of the top projected teams in the Big 12 this year. I mean, despite them eliminating the preseason poll. So I think that Houston is definitely in that lower half of teams where they rank in terms of Colorado's opponents. But I mean, you're preaching to the choir. I think Houston does have the firepower to upset a couple teams this year, but I do think they're still in the bottom half of Colorado's opponents.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's coming out, thinking Houston's going to come win this conference by any means. But this is a very telling game at home if you are the Houston Cougars and, Coach Willie Fritz. You want to be able to come in and set the tone for your season with a big win against Colorado and, prime time, all the attention that comes with it. A win like that could really skyrocket the confidence of your team, of your unit, and I think could really propel them. They're already be halfway towards bowl eligibility at that point.
Yeah, I think it's really good to have Houston in this pocket of our non-conference play, because we've got the one conference game in between the 2 kind of warm-up games, it sort of feels like. I think it keeps them honest, but it also doesn't give them too tough of a challenge right off the bat that's going to kill any confidence. I think that it's going to be this is definitely a lower-end team compared to what they're going to face down the stretch of this season, but it is still a Big 12 team. Colorado's going to have to respect that. They're going in having to understand that this is what we're going to be playing against. This is sort of a taste. And I think it's very good to have them in the spot that they are. But moving on to the big storyline of this past week and going into this week, got to talk quarterback. We've talked about it a lot already, but we gotta get into the nitty-gritty of this quarterback room, starting off with Ryan Staub. What did you think about his breakout performance? Is it legit? Is it a little fluffed up because we were playing Delaware? Is it just too small a sample size? What do we think?
Well, I think the last two things you said, the fact that the Buffs are playing Delaware and the fact that it was a small sample size makes this all very hard to kind of judge. However, I really like the fact that Ryan Staub has been in this program for 3 years. I touched on that a little bit earlier. And I think that for him sticking with the program, he said that he wasn't sure why he necessarily stuck with the program, but as we've heard from Coach Prime and him and his teammates, he's always just been a guy who's been supportive, who's been around, who's willing to know the playbook, who's willing to just kind of do whatever. And as far as Kaden Salter and Julian Lewis, we haven't gotten to know these guys as much because we've only been around, since the spring and this offseason, only 2 weeks into the season. However, we know that, at least for Kaden Salter, this is last year. He needs to figure something out, and he's looking to have a huge year. And so with him maybe not getting onto the field, it's going to be tough for him to maybe try and compartmentalize going through something like this when he's not seeing every single snap. And for Julian Lewis, he's obviously a 17-year-old kid. That is very tough to go through going through a quarterback battle anyway, but especially when it's your first year in college. And there is so much media surrounding his coverage or his recruitment, and just so much about him. With last year, this offseason, his flip, the way he flipped from USC, all the things. There's just so much about him. And so I think that Ryan Staub, there's the least amount of pressure on him. And given the things about his character, that just kind of gives him the best situation to succeed.
I mean, I said it at the very beginning of the show. I mean, you told me 3 years ago that Ryan Staub would have been trying out on the field as a starter. You slapped me silly.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a great performance against Delaware. I mean, it might be a little fluffed up because it was Delaware, very new FBS squad. I do think that Ryan Staub is built for the Pat Shurmur offense. I don't know if Pat Shurmur was able to build an offense for Kaden Salter necessarily. I think that's why Kaden Salter has kind of been struggling offensively. I mean, obviously offensively, but I do think that Ryan Staub might be the guy going forward. I mean, pending this Houston game.
Yeah, and it's a very small sample size. Of course, coming in with that 2-minute drive is very important. But what you got to talk about is, the early throws. Ryan Staub's not going to be afraid to sling it in tight windows. We saw him nearly get picked off, early on in that. But he's got the confidence to come out and change plays at the line. He's got the confidence to send Sincere Brown on a go route. And not only that, the coaches believe in him and trust him to do that. Now, that's not saying, that they don't believe in Kaden Salter or Juju Lewis. But to our knowledge, we had not, learned that yet. And I think for Kaden Salter, you got to continue to be efficient, right? He had, his most efficient day through the air. Took care of the football. Didn't put the football in harm's way by any means. Still overshot a couple guys. Had a couple balls he would have liked back. But I think you still got to rely on the legs of him if you're talking about establishing that run game. And he is that leader. He's been the presence all camp, all summer. That's kind of been, the QB1. You can't forget about his impact to this team. And he's still going to be a very viable option if the Buffs so, choose to go to him.
Yeah, I think you got to kind of look at it for what it is in a way. This is a team thirsty for good quarterback play. We just lost Shedeur Sanders to the NFL, an incredible tool in this offense, a weapon in this offense, and a guy who was able to manage it and make the most of his weapons that he had. And then we go into a season where we got now 3 guys in the rotation and not really a clear answer. Like, now Staub seems to be the guy, but you got to look at it like this is our best quarterback play we've had all season. It's a short season so far, but you got to look at that and be happy about it. I mean, if you're looking for someone to run this offense and you have found him, even if it's for just a couple drives, I wouldn't flinch. And it seems like they haven't. They're moving forward with him right now. This game will be telling. And like you said, he does like to put the ball into tight windows, and he calls shots downfield. He's an aggressive quarterback. But in a way, I feel like that's kind of what this offense needs right now. It's been a little bit dormant. But is he the right call to start against Houston? Should we see the same sort of rotation we saw last week? Is there a different guy you'd want to be taking all the way right now? Is he the right call?
I think that Staub will be the right call for the reasons that I said, and I think that he has the best chance to. I think that he has the best chance to start. And Coach Prime said that the goal is that he wants to ride with one QB. He doesn't like to put when he's gambling, he doesn't like to bet on 3 numbers. He likes 1 number, and that's Black 21. That's what he wants to do. He wants to bet on one guy and have them play for all 4 quarters. And so I think with Staub having the best chance of being the starter on this Friday, I think that he can go the distance. And if we see that, then that will be great for the Buffs. The Buffs can use that as some momentum and ride it into this conference play this season. I know Wyoming is before some other conference opponents, but if Staub can't get it done, then I think that creates a lot of worry. This is last week created a kind of risky situation that we all were talking about in the press box as far as the disruption with the offense and things like that. And Coach Prime has talked about the totality and whatnot. But, it just comes down to whoever's the best guy. And like Coach Prime said, with whoever can create the best on the fly, it seems Staub could do that the best in the small sample size we saw, at least pre-snap.
I do think he's the right call to start against Houston for sure. I mean, I think I've said it 4 times. The offense looked best when he was on the field. He played well. You go with the hot hand. The small sample size is against Delaware, but yeah, I think it's the right call. And I don't think you play games against Houston and play all 3 quarterbacks and see that same quarterback rotation because Houston's a dangerous team. Being the first Big 12 game.
On the road with the crowd, hostile environment, you cannot come out and play 3 quarterbacks. And I think if Colorado's going to win this game, they're going to only have to play 1. I think you want one guy to command, to lead your team that people are going to listen in on and, get rid of the other noise of, is going to be this guy, is going to be, Juju Lewis's turn and get to that drive. Now, if you're up big on Houston, that completely changes everything, right? If you're going into the, fourth quarter, got a 3-score lead and you feel comfortable giving, the freshman, time, or you want to see Caden Salter back in some certain situations, that's a completely different story. But the way it's shaping out, this is going to be a competitive, 4-quarter ball game where the Buffs are going to need all hands on deck, and you could not be swapping quarterbacks.
Yeah, quickly before we go to our next segment, I want to ask you, if for some reason Staub doesn't pan out and we, the things that we're kind of worried about do come true, that being a short sample size, it being fluffed up, and that's not what we see against Delaware, how short of a leash do you keep on him? And then who's the next man up?
I thought that Caden Salter should have been the guy when we only thought that it was him and Julian Lewis in the picture. So I think that he should be the guy over Julian Lewis just because he's sort of proven at this level. And what we saw in the short sample size against Delaware from Julian Lewis was not impressive. He had the hardest time moving the ball. And as I said earlier, he's only 17 years old. And that is hard to handle trying to figure out in your first collegiate year. So if Staub isn't able to figure things out, I think Salter is the guy that you go to. I think that he, just with his experience being more, an actual grown man, that obviously gives him an edge. And I just, because of those reasons, I just think he's a better pick than Julian Lewis, simply put.
I don't think you keep the shortest leash on Staub because he's, once again, offense looked best when he was on the field. But then again, if he does struggle, you go back to K-Salt. He's the 5th year. He's the veteran. He's led the team, like Leo said, through fall camp. I think that he would be the backup, technically, if Staub struggles.
Yeah, and don't write off Caden Salter still being the one who walks his team out, come Friday night. Coach Prime loves to play, games within the media and all that. But that being said, I think, regardless, those got to be the 1A, 1B options. And I think especially on the road, you do not want a 17-year-old Juju Lewis coming out and having to, put the pressure on him of leading a game-winning drive.
Yeah, I think if Staub is struggling, then the team is probably losing. I think so. If you're at a point where you're having to put Julian Lewis in, or you're having to put a backup in, you don't want that to be Julian Lewis. You're playing from behind against a Big 12 team, 17-year-old kid on the road. That's a nightmare for the team and for his confidence, and you don't want to risk that with a 5-star quarterback. I think Salter's the guy. I think he has not exactly made this offense explosive, and they still need to work on play calling for him. As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't seem like they know the team they have when he's on the field. But if they can get that going, and at the very least, you can count on him to be stable enough and maybe get your defense to make some plays. But we're gonna take a step out here. We're going to look around the Big 12. We mentioned that Houston's kind of towards the lower end. Let's see what's going on with some of the other teams. Starting off, I want to talk about, my Big 12 championship pick, Kansas State. So the question I have down here, and I thought of ways to word this. There's not really anything better I can say. What on earth is going on with Kansas State right now?
I can't really answer that question, but I think the big thing that everyone is talking about is just the fact that made the risky decision to start their season in Dublin against Iowa State. And for Iowa State, that's also a big risk. To travel out of the country and be the only 2 teams in a 16-team conference to play 3 games in the first 3 weeks, that is a very risky thing to do, because if you lose that first game, then you are dealing with jet lag as you enter week 2. You're dealing with a lack of momentum, and you were trying to figure things out, especially with some things that we saw off the field for Kansas State. And so I think that is the obvious thing that has stood out for the Wildcats and their struggles. But beyond that, last year they were able to produce on the ground. They had 4 guys who were averaging over 5 yards a carry, led by DJ Giddens, who was fantastic, as Colorado fans unfortunately found out. And so without him, the Wildcats have struggled to be able to move the ball on the ground. Avery Johnson hasn't been able to be as productive running with the ball. And I think part of that is also the fact that Kansas State, they can be prepared for now. The teams have seen Avery Johnson. They know how Kansas State operates. They know how the Wildcats can get to work on offense, and they've struggled so far. And as I've said, with the big risk in the season opener and not panning out with that, it has been hard for them. And of course, we've seen how it's benefited Iowa State on the flip side of that.
Honestly, you can't really blame Avery Johnson. On paper, he's been balling. The defense isn't up to snuff. You're gonna let Army run through you. I mean, Army, this is the same Army that lost to Tarleton State. So I do think that the defense isn't up to snuff, and they haven't been able to produce on the ground, like you said, Oliver. So I think that has really hindered them offensively in being able to move the ball and score touchdowns, because Avery Johnson has been getting it done through the air, but they can't get it done on the ground.
Yeah, this team really just doesn't have an identity coming to the season, right? You thought it was going to be Avery, Johnson, this high-powered offense, but they really have been limited by that defense that you mentioned, Xavier. You're giving up way too much points. Even in these tight early ball games, you should be relying on your defense to be able to help you, to bail you out, to give you, a little bit of cushion to help figure it out and recharge and rejuvenate. But it's just demoralizing when you're getting gashed, when you're an offensive player and you're on the sideline and you're looking up and your defense can't get off the field to save their life. It is demoralizing.
Yeah, I think when I made them as my conference championship pick, I made it on the back of this run game working and breaking down the will of other teams. And Avery Johnson's a mobile quarterback. Dylan Edwards is a good running back. Those two in that backfield, I thought were going to be able to break down the will of another team. But then obviously Dylan Edwards goes down in that first game. I still felt confident riding with my pick though after I saw him in Dublin and the defense looking good, forcing turnovers. I'm like, okay, maybe we're all right. Then they turn around and that defense is still in Ireland. They have not come home with the rest of the team, and they're giving up. They're getting gashed by teams like Army, who, as you mentioned, lost to Tarleton State. Are we really living in a world where Kansas State is a worse team than Tarleton State? That's a question we have to ask right now. And their only win being over an FCS opponent. I mean, this is far below the expectations for them, and a pretty overhyped season for them that is crashing down before conference play started. Another team that has sort of shot below their expectations. Let's talk about Arizona State. They just lost this week to Mississippi State. Are the reigning Big 12 champions overrated potentially?
I mean, I think at this point that's what a lot of people are thinking, but that is because in this day and age, people are very reactionary. What happens on a week-to-week basis, day-to-day basis, even a second-to-second basis, what happened this morning is not as important as what happened, even 30 minutes ago. And so I think that no matter, just the fact that the Sun Devils have struggled so far has almost potentially made them underrated. And I think especially if they continue to struggle, they could be a sleeper and make some noise down the stretch of the season. They return the most players from a college football playoff team. They return the most players in the Big 12, and they went to the college football playoff, and they were the best team in the conference. And that is something that you can't discount. Experience is the most valuable thing a team can have, and I just don't think that this one loss to Mississippi State team that looked pretty solid will makes me think that they're overrated, especially because Mississippi State got votes towards the poll this week. And as I mentioned with Kansas State, I think that Arizona State may be able to be game planned a little bit more, but they returned so many guys. They have the experience, they have the confidence. Mississippi State looks solid, and you can't win them all. So we'll have to see.
I don't think it's Arizona State as a whole that's overrated. Like Harry or Oliver said, it's the returning experience that they have, and they're the best team in the Big 12 last year. I don't think them overall. I don't think Sam Levitt has been playing up to his expectations. Arizona State can't be carried by Cam Scatterbo this year. They need to rely on Sam Levitt, and Sam Levitt has not exceeded expectations like he was expected to be this year. So I don't. If anything, it's Sam Levitt that's overrated.
Yeah, the pressure was on Sam Levitt coming into the season. You got to look at Coach Kenny Dillingham as well. But I think he's going to rally the troops and get his guys right. A loss is not the worst thing for a football team. Sometimes you learn more about yourself in a loss than you do a win. You find the areas you need to improve on. And when you talk about it being against Mississippi State, it was a good opponent, right? It's not like they came out and lost to Army, for example, you know what I'm saying? But, if this is a win, you're able to look yourself in the mirror and really check off what you got to do to get better. And the best part about it is it wasn't against a conference opponent, right? So when you talk about those postseason ambitions, playing for a conference, all that is still very on the table. You just have to go back to practice, look yourself in the mirror and make those adjustments, fix what needs to be fixed to help your team move forward.
Yeah, that's certainly encouraging, and I'm in the boat that I think that they can bounce back. They have the talent to bounce back. I love Sam Levitt in this offense, and Jordan Tyson as well, being able to bounce back. I think they can. I think it's very much on the table. I think that that's a unit that can lead this team. But I will say it's a little concerning. I mean, the defense last year wasn't exactly what you looked at as their strong suit. But happy fall, Arizona, they're getting gashed, they're getting carved like a pumpkin. It's bad right now, and that last unit was able to hold up for their offense, and their offense was able to make plays and win games. And then you also mentioned no Cam Scatterbo. That's a huge loss. That dude it's not talked about how big of a loss truly he was to that team, not only as a player but as the spark plug on the sideline. You see against Texas, he's already running with the whole team on his back, goes to the sideline, yaks, and then throws a touchdown. That's that fires your team up. That fires your team up. You don't got that, and it kind of goes a little unsaid how big of a difference that can make. So next up, we're going to look back to this weekend. I went back around to the tailgates this week ahead of the game against Delaware. Let's see how some people were preparing for the game. Of Colorado football. The Delaware Blue Hens coming to town. We're going to walk around to some tailgates, see how people are getting ready for the game. All right, we're rolling up to our first tailgate of the day. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are we doing today?
Go Buffs! Woo!
Can anyone give a score prediction for today? Buffs by $1 million.
24-31. Go Buffs!
24-31. All right. Is anyone excited to see Julian Lewis today? He's going to be playing. Yeah?
Yes.
What are we doing to prepare for the game today? Eating food.
Prosecco.
Prosecco.
We're celebrating the Buffs.
Yeah, so you have to, of course. Dasher. Is Dasher a key part of the tailgate?
Of course.
Of course. Dasher, what are your score predictions for the game today? A blowout.
Smell rotisserie chicken.
Smell rotisserie chicken. I like that. All right, we are rolling up on Farron Field here today. We got a few more tailgates popping up. How are we feeling about the game today?
Feeling good. Let's go Buffs.
Pressure's on. All right, let's see. Ooh, bang. Give me some. That was a heck of a shot. Oh, man. Well, hey, that was a pretty good performance. The pressure being on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are out here on the practice field. This is where most of the tailgating is going on so far. We're still pretty early. It's a 1:30 kickoff. It's also Delaware, so Delaware doesn't sell a whole ton of tickets. What are we grilling up over here? A little bit of breakfast. How are we feeling about the game today? Are we feeling as good about that?
Probably win by 35, 40 points.
Win by 35, 40?
Around.
Yeah. What are you guys doing other than this to get prepared for the game? Anything else today?
We're getting up. And,
Yeah, dude.
and it's game day.
Yeah, happy game day. All right, can we see you guys draw up a play that you want to see from the Buffs today and run it?
100%. Let's do it, fellas. Play action.
Play action.
Set, hike.
Let's see it. Oh! Dropped in the bucket. Oh, no! Heck, yeah, that was a heck of a defensive play. All right, we have rolled up to probably the biggest cluster of tailgates today, and we have our second dog of the tailgate. I wanted to know, who is this that we are joined by?
This is Rosie.
Rosie, it is nice to meet you. Rosie, how are we feeling about the game today?
As for y'all, how are we feeling about the game? How many points do we think CU's putting up on Delaware today? 34? All right. Do the games feel a little less like the start of the game feels a little more mellow without Ralphie?
We need to bring the energy.
Yeah.
Bring the buzz up. Get Ralphie back out there, you know what I mean?
I would rather have a walking Ralphie than no Ralphie.
Yes, agreed.
What's Chip's
Agreed.
40 time?
How many points are we putting up on Delaware?
What are we favored? 21? I say 29.
29?
29 on Delaware.
29.
I think we hang a 40 spot. We call it good.
40 spot and call it good. All right. How many points do we think Julian's going to be accountable for?
I think he throws 2 tuds, maybe runs for 1. Call it 21. And then he chills.
Perfect.
Yeah. Keep him
That's
safe.
21.
Hey. Keep everybody safe today.
Oh my goodness. I will come back. I know. I got to get someone to feed me. What are we doing to get ready for the game today? Nice. Mimosas. Hey, go mimosas and go puffs. Ladies and gentlemen, how are we doing today? Feeling good? Feeling good? How many points are we hanging on Delaware? Oh. Yeah, get him out of the shot. Get him out of the shot. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this week's Tailgate Takeover. We are going to head into the stadium now. Lots of fans out here today. Going to hopefully be even more once we get into conference play, but Delaware about to get a whooping on in just a few moments. Take care, everyone.
All right. Well, before we get into pick'ems, I just want to say a quick happy birthday to my mom, to the lovely Miss Carrie Howard. Thank you for everything you do. But next,
And our president.
Harrison Simeon, Mr. President. It's his birthday today. We got to give him a shout out. But anyway, let's move to some more parties. We got Saturday coming up, but first we're going to talk about Kansas State and Arizona. The Wildcats, we just talked about them. Off the rails right now. This is their toughest game of the season after all of that. Well, arguably, Iowa State was a really tough opponent. This is a tough game that they got to play now after 2 straight really bad weeks. Who do you got taking this game, and does Kansas State get back on track?
Well, even though as a CU student it pains me to say because I don't like Arizona, I have to go with Arizona. Their offense has been clicking, but specifically we talked about how bad Kansas State's run offense has been, and Arizona has been great at stopping the run so far through 2 weeks. And so, I mean, that just leaves me no options but to pick Arizona in this week 3 matchup. Excuse me.
You said you don't like Arizona? Well, I hate Arizona. So I'll take the K-State. I'll take the other Wildcats to get back on track and Avery Johnson to ball out.
Yeah, we got cat-on-cat crime happening, man. You might find this in the back of an alley in New York somewhere. But, I think that's about represents the quality of this football game. Going forward, I am going to have to ride with the Arizona Wildcats, though. Based on the fact that this team is just too poor on defense, Kansas State. I think it gives plenty of offense for Nova Fee to come out, exploit some holes, really try to, find their rhythm and finally get going.
Yeah, I don't know if it's out of anger that Kansas State is disappointing me and making me look awful on my conference championship pick, but they have been so frustrating to watch. This is a team like I can't watch a Kansas State game right now. They look
believe your paper
awful.
says something different than this often.
Yeah. So I have a very quick my only notes on Kansas State. Kansas State is dookie butter. That's all I got written down. They are the worst team in the Big 12 right now, and they could bounce back from that certainly. But Arizona, I think that the offense is going to destroy them. I think Noah Fafita is going to have a huge game, and yeah, they got a great run. They got a great running back room. Quincy Craig, Ismail Mahdi, they're going to have a great game. Arizona by a lot, I think. So then we move to Oregon State and Texas Tech. Oregon State off to a slow start to the year, even though some people kind of saw them as a bit of a sleeper team. Now they got a tough test in Texas Tech.
Well, it seems we've kind of gotten off the rails a little bit. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Texas Tech, they're ranked. Oregon State, they're struggling 0-2. The Red Raiders, it's a pretty obvious pick in my eyes.
Oh, yeah, obvious. Red Raiders all the way. I mean, I think they're 23.5-point favorites. They average 604 yards per game. Texas Tech by a million.
It must be the money, because that's all I see is dollar signs every time I look at Texas Tech. The oil tycoons are funneling in NIL for that program. Give me the Red Raiders.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with the Red Raiders. Texas Tech, I think that they are going to throw for about 500 yards against Oregon State's defense. Oregon State's defense looks really bad right now. Their secondary is losing matchups to every receiver they face. Their special teams, to quote their head coach, was a flipping joke. I think that's the F word he used on live television. This team is they're falling back. They're falling behind right now. This is not the expectations they had, especially bringing in Malik Murphy and hoping that he was going to really spark that offense after what he did at Duke. Texas Tech, I think, is going to stick it to them. Next up, though, we got the backyard brawl. Pittsburgh taking on West Virginia.
Pittsburgh, they're 2-0. They've been pretty solid offensively, especially throwing the ball. But West Virginia, even though they're 1-1, haven't shown us anything too special this season. I'm going to go a shot in the dark, pick them as the upset this week because their pass defense has been pretty solid. And I think that they could stymie Pittsburgh a little bit and potentially pull off that upset in week 3 and improve to 2-1.
I mean, Rich Rod couldn't beat Ohio, so I don't think Rich Rod's going to beat Pittsburgh. I mean, that's about it. I mean, Pittsburgh's 2-0. Offense has been buzzing. Give me Pittsburgh.
Yeah, you look at this West Virginia team, they had no idea, at Big 12 media what their identity was going to be. They brought 3 people. They had by far the least amount of representation of any Big 12 team. And I think that was a reflection on, the depth of this squad because it's pretty lacking. They had a very disappointing loss, last week. That was a game they should have won. And I think, looking into this rivalry, I think Pittsburgh's going to be ready to thump them. I think they're the more physical team, and they're going to come out and get the victory.
Yeah, I think that Pittsburgh is a sneakily complete team. They're not a team that's really talked about as a team that doesn't have a lot of glaring issues, but they really don't. Eli Holstein's a great quarterback. He leads the offense well. On defense, Kyle Lewis, their star linebacker, is flying to the ball. He's been a game wrecker. 2 sacks, 11 total tackles, 4 of them by himself. And last year, he had 4 interceptions. The guy was everywhere, and he's been that guy for Pittsburgh. Hasn't left the program. He stayed there. They've built that culture in Pittsburgh, and I think that they are going to take that to West Virginia and pick up a win. Next up, we have the number 14 Iowa State Cyclones taking on the Arkansas State Red Wolves. Who do you got?
Well, I went with the unpopular pick last time, so I'm going to go with it again. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to go with Iowa State, number 14 ranked in the country. Arkansas State, in their one game against a pretty solid opponent in Arkansas, they got blown out, ran by, and I was just really inspired by Rocco Becht, especially in that performance in Dublin, and so give me Iowa State.
Iowa State's coming off a slobber knocker against their rival, Iowa. I think that they will tune up against Arkansas State before they start Big 12 play.
Yeah, I think, this is a very interesting game because when you are such a favorite team and you are ranked, it becomes very easy to overlook these opponents. But I don't think that's the kind of team Iowa State is. They're built very fundamentally sound. This is an old school football team. They want to do things the right way, and I think they understand, what's at stake this week. They're going to come out, take care of business, get the W.
All right, you see it on the screen right now, and I'm not 100% confident in what I'm about to do. Iowa State's a great team. Rocco Becht is a great quarterback, and their offense looks complete. This team looks good. They deserve their number 14 ranking. But dude, Arkansas State actually I like this team a lot. Let me explain a little bit. Jalen Raynor, their quarterback. Go watch some Jalen Raynor film if you have some spare time tonight. That guy is one of the better group of 5 quarterbacks, one of the best at creating plays, and if you're going to beat a number 14 team, it's going to have to be chaos. Secondly, it's at Arkansas State. This is a road game for Iowa State. I know Arkansas State doesn't exactly pack the stands, but for a bigger game like this, it's going to be a more full game. They're going to have the crowd on their side. Their wide receiver, Chauncey Cobb, 9 receptions, 135 yards this season. Jalen Raynor has gotten it to him successfully, and the offense has flown well and efficiently through him. Nigel Nelson, their linebacker, he's a top 40 tackler in the country right now, 18 total tackles. Secondary tends to force some bad throws. We saw Rocco Becht, not any interceptions against Kansas State, but some bad incompletions. And if they're going to get some stops on defense, they're going to need to force that. Arkansas State is built like the team to do that. So while I think this is a complete long shot, I was very inspired by Patrick Dawson last week and his pick of Army over Kansas State. So give me the Red Wolves with the upset of the year.
Yeah, that's some very interesting inspiration. I must add, Liam Howard. I don't know if I would have, drew inspiration for that.
He was right.
I will just say, the Cyclones fans know how to travel.
True.
Do not underestimate
That is a good point.
their,
They will be
impact
there.
at this game because they're going to be well represented.
Yep, they will be well represented. I mostly am. I think my mind says Iowa State, but something in my heart's telling me the Red Wolves are bringing it on Saturday. Then we have another top 25 team traveling on the road to face a Group of 5 opponent. Wyoming will be at home against the number 20 Utah Utes. Who do you got?
Of all the games with a ranked opponent in the Big 12, I think this could be the closest because Wyoming, they have shown a pretty solid defense so far, even though their offense hasn't necessarily done great things on the other side of the ball. But given that both teams being 2-0, I think that Utah, being the ranked opponent, their offense is just far better than Wyoming's, and I think that when it comes to two solid defenses, that would just be way too easy for the Utes to overpower Wyoming's defense, even though it has shown some bright spots this season, and I'll take the Utes in this game.
I think Wyoming's defense has played pretty good, but they've also played nobody the first 2 games, and so has Utah, right? But Utah does have a strong transporter class. They have Devin Dampier. They have along with that, they brought in his OC, and they brought in another 4-star running back, Wayshawn Parker, who was the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year. So I think Utah's just going to run right through the jaws of that Cowboy defense, and they're going to take the dub.
Yeah, Utah's offense is far superior to anything that the Cowboys have seen this year. You do got to, take in the fact that they are going to be at home, right? Pretty good, environment, actually, the Wyoming Cowboys. There's not much else to do in the state of Wyoming, so why not, go out and watch some football on the Saturday? But that being said, I don't know if all, 100 people in the state of Wyoming are going to be enough of support, for the Cowboys come out and get the W. Give me the Utes.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take the Utes as well. I love this team that they've built here. This is reminding me of the Utah team that was, playing really well at the end of the Pac-12 era. And they, Devin Dampier is a great quarterback, and he earned this job. He proved it at New Mexico. He's proving it here. He's adjusting well to the higher level of play. I think he's going to continue to do well against Wyoming. Their defense, I mentioned their linebackers I think it was week 1 when they were playing UCLA. I was right. They had Nico Iamaleava seeing ghosts very quickly, and it was a bad game for the Bruins, and that was because of Utah's defense, especially their linebacking core. I think they're going to do the exact same thing, if not worse, to Utah. But next up, we have Arizona State taking on Texas State. This is a game that ended up in a Texas State victory last year. A lot of people don't remember that, but Texas State beat a playoff team last year. Who do you got taking it this year?
No, I do remember that. And Texas State, again, they are showing that they are solid. They are 2-0 to start the season, beating UTSA and Eastern Michigan. However, I will use this as a chance to talk about my 2022 Buffs, as I was a freshman that year, even though they went 1-11. Owen McCown, he's playing for UTSA. He had 219 yards and 2 touchdowns throwing against Texas State. And I think that shows how Sam Leavitt will have a platform to step up, produce like you guys say he needs to for the Sun Devils to get going. And also Robert Henry Jr. for UTSA had 159 yards and 2 touchdowns, so he had a big game. With the absence of Cam Scatterbo, that could be a chance for the Sun Devils to get the running back room going. And so just with my platform to talk about the CU boys, Jordan Tyson, I want to talk about him a little bit earlier. Along with Owen McCown, he was one of the only other bright spots before he tore his ACL his freshman season, and he was only 17 years old. Speaking of 17-year-olds, and he was so inspiring. It broke my heart when he hit the transfer portal, but I think that he can make some big plays, and that Owen McCown showed that Texas State can be thrown against, and that Arizona State could build some momentum and get things on track.
I think Arizona State's going to figure it out offensively against this Texas State defense that allows 427 yards per game. I mean, you just talked about Owen McCown going off. I mean, Owen McCown did not go off in 2022 with the Buffs. So I do think that Arizona State's going to figure it out against Texas State, and give me the Sun Devils.
Yeah, this game's tricky because, as much as it seems, open within the offensive air raid, you got to be careful. You cannot put that football in harm's way, and you cannot come into this game thinking you're just going to be, pass dominant and come out and win. Rely on the run, create these play action opportunities. They're going to be, easier throws for Sam Leavitt. Get him more comfortable, get him in a rhythm, and I think, ASU is going to do that as they come in. And I think putting all those elements together within the offense, the defense is going to be good enough to keep it close. They're going to come out and get the stub.
Yeah, I think that I talked earlier about if this team is going to bounce back, the offense has to. It's got to be Sam Levitt. It's got to be Jordan Tyson. I think that this is the perfect opportunity for that to happen. If your offense is starting in a rut, they have to have a game that's going to get them back. It's not going to just happen like progressively. If it's bad over and over again, it's going to stay bad. And this is the perfect game for them to do that. They can move the ball effectively any way they want really against Texas State. We've seen other teams do that. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Sun Devils to win that. But that brings us to our Colorado versus Houston matchup. The Buffaloes taking their first road trip of the season. They'll head to Houston. They'll face the Cougars in TD ECU Stadium. I got that memorized.
Yes.
Who do you have taking this game?
Well, I've spoken highly of Colorado so far, even though they've had a tough start. Obviously, I've spoken about my Buffs, that even if they're not on the team, they're playing for other teams. I've spoken highly of them. I've talked about who I've hated across the conference in Arizona, even though I ended up picking them. But sometimes you wake up and you're going to, go, I'm going to wear a tie today. And I'm going to go and pick Houston. I think that they have the best offense that the Buffs will have faced so far with Connor Wegman, Dean Connors, and Tanner Koziel. I think that those three are a three-headed monster that could produce some great offense against the Buffs, especially against a defense that hasn't been too inspiring in my eyes. I wrote about it for Buff Stampede if you want to go check it out. But anyways, Colorado, they just have not been too inspiring to me. Ryan Staub will have to have a heck of a game if they want to beat the Cougars. And given that, I think Houston will pull out this win and improve to 3-0.
Yeah, offensively, the Buffs need to get the ground game going. They need Ryan Staub to have a great performance against that tough Houston defense. But I do think that the Colorado defense finally shuts down the run, shuts down the counter game. Reginald Hughes, Martavius French finally communicate like Leo talked about. And I do think that Houston will make it a close game. It'll be a 4-quarter game, and I think the Buffs will upset. I guess it is an upset. I think the Buffs will upset Houston in Houston in overtime to make a statement.
Overtime.
For the Big 12 opener.
Yeah, you got to watch Dean Connors, in that backfield. That's going to be the guy they're going to have to key on defensively. And, of course, you talked about their tight end as well. However, that's, a multitude of problems that have killed the Buffs over the last couple of years. But that being said, this gots to be a rhythm game. This gots to be one where the offense comes out with consistency and you come out firing. You got to jump out on Houston. On the road, personally, I'm not deferring. I'm electing to receive this kick. I'm putting Ryan Staub in that offense out, and you need to go put up 7 points to go out on a lead. I think that's going to be the best path to success if you are the Colorado Buffaloes, and I think they are going to be able to establish a run. They're going to be able to rely on the legs of guys like Simeon Price, sling it out to Jalen Taylor, let Track Hawk loose, let him run wild, and find these receivers like Joseph Williams, like Hakeem Williams, like Sincere Brown, who are going to need the ball to come out and be successful. Give me Colorado.
I'm not gonna lie. You made some very good points about Houston. They're a tough team, and I worry about this game a little bit. I think that Houston can air the ball out. Connor Weigman's gonna play really well. The defense, even against Delaware last week, that Delaware touchdown drive, we kind of got steamrolled. I'm not gonna lie. We were on our heels that whole drive, and they scored. But I would rather die screaming about the Buffs and be wrong than pick against them. Give me the Buffs by 1,000,000. The new sheriff is in town. Sheriff Staub coming to take over Texas. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here on SBS Football Live. Enjoy the game this week. Remember, you heard it here first.